With a few simple techniques and a light touch, you can create these beautiful flowers that have the look of porcelain using supplies from the It's So Swirly CreateAlong box. Hi there, Sandy Huntress here, bringing you another polymer clay project. So when I got the CreateAlong box that included this template, I didn't see snail swirls, I saw roses. I know that's odd, but I love to sculpt. And this is really easy to do. It's a lot of fun and you get a beautiful result. You're going to start with some light colored polymer clay rolled out on a fairly thin setting, about 1 millimeter thick. It's a number 6 on my Atlas pasta machine. This is an ivory that I made by mixing together 4 parts white and 1 part ecru. I've already made flowers in all of the sizes of templates except the middle one. So you can see them here. I used all different colors. So I will use the middle one for this demonstration. You want to kind of burnish this spiral down just so it's stuck to the clay. Then use a craft knife to cut out the shape. Now you do not have to worry about doing this really accurately. And what I would recommend for a smooth cut so you're not chopping into your template is when you have your craft knife against it, don't angle the blade towards it or even right along it. Actually angle it just ever so slightly away from that edge. You may pick up a little extra bit of clay doing that, and that's all right. Like I said, it is not important in this to have a perfectly accurate cut. If it's a little wobbly in spots, it's okay, you'll see. And this is why we kind of wanted to stick that down, otherwise it'll move just from the pressure of the blade. And oh, wobbled a little there, it does not matter. You do want to put your clay on a small tile, like a 4-inch ceramic tile to begin with. It's a lot easier. Peel away the excess, leaving that little spiral. Now you want to take a large ball tool. This is a 1/2-inch ball tool from the Sculpey Style in Details set. And you are going to use it to kind of ruffle and thin the edges. This is one reason why we wanted this on the tile, because there's a lot of spinning involved, and this just makes it so much easier. You can just spin the tile. When you do this, you want your tool angled over the main part of the clay. So the ball is on the edge and then the tool is over, and that way you'll get a nice, almost hammered looking edge. But mostly we're going for ruffling it and thinning it. At some point you're not going to be able to get in there. So grab your clay blade and just carefully wiggle it underneath and kind of straighten this piece out. You still want all of those edges to be flat on the tile, but you can actually kind of stretch it and straighten it out a little bit. And you may have to do this a couple times as you're working. Okay. I do want to thin this inner edge as well. We're not going to see this in our finished flower, but if you thin it out, it will make it easier to roll it up nicely, instead of having a kind of a thick, lumpy bit of clay there. So we're just going to flatten that out too, thin those edges, and there we go. Next we'll add some texture. Now what I have here is the Christy Friesen Gotta Have It tool. And it's a wonderful tool, but you don't have to have this. You could use a needle tool, you could use a toothpick, but if you have this, I like it because of the shape. I can just go in and out and texture those edges. If you have a bent edge needle tool, the one that has just like an angle, that would work great too. Try anything you have. You could use the end of your clay blade, a single edge razor blade, whatever you have. We're just creating some texture along this outer edge. And if it gets all uneven and rippled, well, that's what I'm going for. I want something very ruffly, sort of carnation-like. These put me in mind of the Capodimonte, is that it? Flowers that you see, the porcelain. I'm sure if you looked at them side by side, you might not agree, but that's just kind of what they make me think of. This gives us a very delicate, thin edge. And for this, you only have to go to this center portion. And depending on the tool you have, again, you might have to use your blade, lift this up again, and unfurl it, so to speak, so that you can get in there. But I think we got this. I can also just tap it up and down. There. Next, I'm going to use some of these pigment powders from CreateAlong. These are the ones I used on the other flowers, as you can see. I think I'll use this turquoise. I'm going to use one of these applicators that came in the It's So Swirly box. And I'm just going to put on a fair amount of this powder. I want to cover those edges that I just textured. And I'm just kind of pouncing it on. I don't want to flatten out my texture, but I want this powder to get down into all those little indents that I just made. And I'm trying to keep it just on that edge for the most part. These applicators are pretty cool. It's one of those things where I opened the box and I looked at it and said, eh. But then I pulled them out to use them, and oh, yeah, those are kind of nice. When you're done, you can just give it a good tap on your trash can, and most of the stuff comes off. And then, of course, you can, it's just a little sponge, so you can run it under the tap and clean off most of the rest and reuse them. I imagine at some point the sponge will wear out, but you can reuse them a few times anyways. Next, I'm going to take this, hold it over the trash can, and blow off as much of the excess as I can. Now I'm going to use a baby wipe. If you don't have a baby wipe, just a soft cloth with a bit of rubbing alcohol will do. And I want to wipe off the majority of that powder. Now some of the colors will stain the clay more, like this dark one stained the insides. That's okay, this blue one looks like it's staining, but this will be fine. And if you need to, go ahead and get out a clean wipe, and to really clean it out, kind of go in the same direction as your lines. Let that sit and dry for a couple minutes before you handle it. Now that this is dry, you can use your clay blade to gently work under this and lift it off the tile. Be sure that you have your blade at an angle to the tile. I'm just going to do a back and forth motion so that you get your clay nice and cleanly without distorting or stretching or tearing it. But it should be up off the tile. Now we'll roll our flower. Start with this little round bit in the center. I like to kind of use my thumbnail. It often is a good little tool just for nudging clay until I can get it between my fingers and roll. Once you have that center rolled, kind of pull it below the rest. Don't have it way up here. It looks odd. Have it lower than the rest and continue rolling. And every so often I use the thumbnail of my other hand and kind of give it a little poke so that it's not just a single spiral, but it has a little bit of shape and movement. Also, you can use your thumb and kind of stroke those edges out a bit. So there, a little pinch. This is actually a bit easier to do with the larger ones. The two smaller ones are a little tricky, but they still came out nice. Just keep wrapping and kind of make a little fold. Stroke that out a little. Oh, that one's pretty with that turquoise. Because we just have that little bit of color in the edges, gives it that very delicate look. And then this end, you can bring it just up or you can kind of curl it back. It's up to you. If you have enough, I found with the larger ones, you can actually start kind of twirling it in your fingers. And then you'll be able to remove some of that excess. Also, if you have a tool like this that lets you get in, this is part of a wax carving set, I believe. You can go in and separate out some of those and really kind of show off those very thin, delicate edges. At this point, if you have enough clay and it's easy to handle, you can just trim off that excess and then bake it. Well, some of these, like this one, it just felt so delicate, I actually left that on. You can then use these flowers to decorate anything you like. This is a little notebook that came in a previous CreateAlong box. I painted it with a couple coats of acrylic paint, then used the Enchanted Rosevine silkscreen, also by CreateAlong, just for some place to put these. Once they are baked, they're very easy to trim. You can use your clay blade or a craft knife. This one. There we go. So it'll sit flat. After baking, we can put in our little blue one. And you could use any strong glue, E6000, 2-part epoxy. Use these in jewelry or anything you'd like. Again, this is Sandy Huntress for CreateAlong, wishing you happy creating.